Chapter 8. The Hydrangea and the Spire. Isabella. The room was warm and peaceful. Isabella awoke, her eyes slowly opening. She felt so tired. Incredibly tired. Golden sunlight bathed the room. There were no signs or sounds of servants. She was in a strange bed that definitely was not her own. The sheets were yellow and gold, and she knew she was not in her room. Where was she? How did she get here? She stretched out her arms and looked around. Then she saw it. There was her brother lying in his monastery healing bed. The room was completely empty of people except the two of them. Her mind was blurry and coming to blanks of what had happened yesterday. She sat there thinking for a few seconds. The memory came back to her. She had been so exhausted from using all of her healing magic yesterday that she had collapsed on the ground. That nice woman, the acolyte who had led her in the monastery, must have set this makeshift bed up for her. The acolyte had been a bit dismissive at first of Isabella attempting to heal Camillo, but she had joined in aiding Isabella, being moved by her passion and love. Such a sweet woman. Isabella quickly got out of her makeshift bed. She rushed over to the side of Camillo's bed and cupped his face in her hands. He was still breathing. That was good. He was still alive. She would do the same today. Once she felt her magic had regenerated fully, she would use all of it on Camillo just like she had done yesterday. She knew she should not be doing that. It was very dangerous to exert oneself in such a way. Most spellcasters could regenerate their magic reserves with a good night of rest, but expelling them all at once was very dangerous and possibly deadly. Expelling all of her magical reserves 2 days in a row back-to-back in such a way would be agonizing, and there was most certainly a possibility that she would die if she kept exerting herself like this. But she needed to do it. Camillo needed her. She began to chant her healing words and to form the proper hand motions. "I know what you are trying to do," a familiar voice said. "I have contacted your father about you and he has made it clear you are not to do that. He did say you could stay by his side. But we will be having none of that. We have plenty of healers and some have already made their rounds this morning to this room." It was the kindly acolyte woman from yesterday. Isabella looked over to the woman. Her hands were still in their healing position. The woman had lovely brown hair and wore a golden priestess robe of Apollo. She looked like she was in her 30s and there was an air of experience around her. To Isabella, the woman almost seemed as if she was an angel as she stood bathing in the rays of the golden sunlight. "My name is Sister Hilda," the woman said. "Your brother is my responsibility, Lady Isabella. Please, take a seat. You may be awake and full of a foolish albeit commendable determination, but your body needs to rest some more after what you pulled yesterday." Sister Hilda held in her hands a tray full of fresh bread, butter, cheese, and dried meats. There was also a glass flagon full of water along with glass cups as well. She placed it all on a table in the room and started to spread butter on the slices of bread. She offered one of the freshly prepared slices to Isabella. Isabella stood there and turned back to face Camillo. He did look a bit better than he had yesterday before she collapsed. She accepted the slice and sat down in a chair by the table. "Is there really nothing else we can do?" she asked as she took a bite of the bread. "I am afraid not," Sister Hilda said. "We need to give him time to heal. The wounds he has suffered would have killed any other man by now, but because he got the best healing that Lord Hortensio can provide, he has survived. And I believe the boy is strong. Every moment his heart still beats. Every time he breathes. He is fighting." She poured water from the flagon into one of the cups and offered it to her. Isabella took it and started emptying the cup of its contents rapidly as she had now just realized how thirsty she was. They continued to eat the food together. It was plain and simple, but she had been very tired and very famished. She had collapsed in the early evening yesterday and had slept that entire time. Yesterday she had gotten up pretty late, around a little bit past midday, and had had nothing to eat since the night of the previous day. To her, this plain and simple monastery food was a feast at the moment. She ate 4 slices of the buttered bread and had piled meat and cheese on top of them. After a refill from the flagon, she was full and sat there feeling quite a bit rejuvenated. Sister Hilda walked over to her. She knelt down close to her. What was she doing? I know this is a tough time for you, she said. I have seen that look in your eyes. You love him dearly. But there is something else I see. There is a hollowness. An emptiness. This horrible thing that has happened to him. None of it is your fault. You are a good sister. With you watching over him, he will be just fine. Sister Hilda gave her a warm embrace. She had not realized it, but she had needed something like that as well. It felt like the true embrace of a mother. Lady Adesinda had never embraced or held her in any way similar to this. Her birth mother was living in a village near the city called the Moss Grove, though she rarely got to see her. She had never really known what it was like to have a loving, caring mother. She was sure her birth mother loved her from the few times that they had met, but she had always longed to have lived with her. When her father found her birth mother, she had been a slave. Father had bought her from the slave traders as he saw that her mother had the defining traits of Agenorian noble blood, of shining silver eyes and beautiful black hair. He brought her to the kingdom's crown-born authentication chamber, and it was revealed that she was pure crown-born. He made her his mistress, and Isabella had been born because of that. Lady Adesinda had not borne father any pure crown-born children. While she had hated it, she had to give in to his demands to have his mistress, but she had her own terms. He could see his mistress, but all Hortensio children were to be raised at the palace in Gurridon under Adesinda, and his mistress would not be allowed to live within the city. It had always puzzled Isabella why Lady Adesinda wanted to be her mother, but never had really acted as one to her. She always found ways to keep her from seeing her birth mother, though her father had been able to arrange a few times for them to meet over her life. Isabella squeezed her arms around Sister Hilda as she let her tears flow. He will be just fine, Sister Hilda said, caressing her head. A knock came at the door to the room. Sister Hilda got up and walked over to the door. It had been short, but Isabella had greatly appreciated that moment. Who is it? Sister Hilda said. Amalia, the flame spire, daughter of Duke Winguric, the person on the other side said. May I come in? Amalia, that was the lady she had introduced herself to yesterday, though they had at most only interacted a few minutes. What was she doing here? Maybe she was here on one of Duke Winguric's scheming plots that father always complained about. Sister Hilda looked back at her for an answer. Let her in, Isabella said. Sister Hilda opened the door and there stood Amalia, the flame spire. It occurred there at that moment that Isabella found it very strange that she had a title such as that. Why was she called the flame spire? Who really was this daughter of Duke Winguric? Why are you here? Isabella asked with a bit of authoritativeness in her voice. She was not going to let Duke Winguric or his daughter mess with Camillo. She would act proper for a fellow noble and let her visit, but she would not let her do anything to her dear younger brother. Amalia held a small bouquet of hydrangeas of both blue and purple colors, the flowers that represented the house crest of Hortensio. She placed it near Camillo's feet on his bed. If I am to be completely honest, I am here to pay a visit to my betrothed, Amalia said. Isabella sat there silent. What did she just say? Betrothed. It's unfortunate he is in such a state, but that is part of the reason why I chose him, Amalia continued. Out of the three available, Camillo has proven to be the most accomplished. What are you talking about? Isabella inquired. Are my words not clear enough? I am going to marry him. He is the best suited to be my husband of the three unmarried sons of Lord Hortensio. Bruno and Leo may be older, but they are weak and not fit to be making decisions that could affect the kingdom as a whole. Marry him. You can't. He's too young. Some young men marry at 16 and some even 14 if needs be. 17 is plenty old enough. But. Why do you need to marry him? Who said that you could? Your father and the king say I can. And for why? It is obviously for political reasons. I will be marrying him for the sake of better stability in the kingdom and to provide protection where it is most needed. Look at him. He can't be married to anyone like this. And what makes him better than Bruno and Leo? In truth, though Isabella did love Bruno and Leo, and despite them being the elder brothers of Camillo, she did agree with Amalia that Camillo was the better man of the three brothers. Many things make him better, Amalia answered. Out of all three of them, and even out of all your brothers, I would argue that Camillo is the most like his father. Sergio is a great warrior and has done great things, but I have heard some things that make me question the magnitude of his feats from very reputable sources. Bruno and Leo are absolute props. That is fairly common knowledge though. They always go into battles and play along in campaigns, but they never do any of the heavy work and are always said to be sitting in the safest places possible. Your two eldest brothers, even if they were available, would only be worth marrying because they are the heirs of Hortensio. They have not really done anything to garner my attention. Their most notable qualities are in fact the women that they married. The eldest, Aurelio II, was married to a Cerularian princess. The second eldest, Argio, ran off with some blood-fallen maiden to the great dismay of your father. With all that being said, I don't think I would need to go any further to explain why Camillo is the best. But I shall. Those who have fought alongside him say his silver eyes shine with the same pride and honor as his father. He fights not just for glory, but to protect his family, friends, and the kingdom. The fact he is lying here now in front of us is a testament of that. The fact that he has not fallen yet is proof of his strength. When I look at him, I do not see a dying boy. I see a man being molded by the gods. That was a lot to take in. This Amalia was very clever. It was clear that she knew much about Isabella's family. What she had said was quite sensible for a lady having to choose one of Lord Hortensio's sons to marry. She had said some pretty mean things about Sergio, Leo, and Bruno though. Those three always told her the truth. They would never lie to their dear younger sister. Amalia had to be lying about the things she had heard of them. How are you marrying Camillo going to provide protection where it is most needed? Isabella inquired once again. He is in no fit state to lead or fight right now, and you are just a lady, a woman. Amalia laughed at this remark. That is quite amusing coming from a young lady such as yourself. A young woman such as yourself, Amalia jabbed back. Women can be in the military. It is not very common in our kingdom, but it is not outlawed like it is in other places. We can be soldiers and commanders if we put in the work. Yes, Isabella said. But we are supposed to be mostly the healers and supporters in battles while the men do most of the fighting. They are the ones that protect, while we heal and empower them with our magic. That is tradition. Which, I have nothing against. I quite like the system actually. It is well organized and has served the kingdom very well for over a century. But not all traditions are set in stone, and there can be exceptions. And how are you an exception? Amalia gave Isabella a puzzled look as if she should have known something. I guess I was not as well known as I thought I was, Amalia said. I guess no matter how great my achievements have been thus far, I still am one of my father's bastard-born children. I am legitimate now, but the origins of my birth will stick with me for the rest of my days. Amalia walked over and took a seat at the table and started to prepare some slices of garnished bread for herself. Sister Hilda, who had been silent this entire time, went to Camillo's bedside and started checking his wrappings. I am the exception, Amalia said with power in her voice as if she had suddenly grown to the size of a giant. Because I am a Bellatrix. Her voice had not actually been very loud, but it was as if her presence had filled the entire room with a domineering energy. Amalia took a bite of the slice she had just finished preparing. She did it so casually, like she had not just made an extraordinarily profound statement just a few seconds ago. You're a Bellatrix. Isabella said in disbelief despite the fact she had just felt what most certainly had been draconic presence amplification. She could easily recognize it. Though he never aimed it at her, she had been in the presence of her father when he had used it on many occasions. And of course, there was that time she had been in the presence of Asamazoi, the silver dragon. It was still hard for her to believe. Amalia had been bastard-born yet. Somehow, she had become a Bellatrix. I am indeed, Amalia said. Her amplified presence had been deactivated. My title is the Flame Spire for the spear I wield and the crest of my family. I can be a protector. I will be a protector. You and I, we are not so different, Lady Isabella. How are we anything alike other than the fact we were both born bastards? Isabella argued. We were both legitimized because we were authenticated as crown-born. I guess it was never really a question whether you would be one. As for me, I guess I was lucky, for my mother is pure blood-fallen. It was a miracle that I turned out to even be impure crown-born. And even though you are pure, you still have lived your life in the shadows of the rest of your family. I know how that feels all too well. Isabella found herself agreeing more and more with Amalia despite how hostile she had been towards her when she had first arrived in the room. Lastly, we are both protectors. You may say you are not, but what are you doing right now? You are protecting your brother from a potential hag that threatens to take him away. You're no hag, Isabella said playfully. But you do seem like you could be a mischievous witch. They both laughed. Isabella still felt a little suspicious of Amalia, but she was now genuinely starting to feel comfortable around her. Don't worry, Amalia assured. I have already made a crown oath to your father to be loyal to your family and the son of Lord Hortensio that I marry. I have made no such oaths to my father, and honestly, he can shove off for all I care. He holds wealth, status, entertainment, and the kingdom all at similar levels of importance, and on a whim, he will decide which one to prioritize to best fit his mood. Technically, he stays within his oaths to serve the king and the kingdom, but he does the bare minimum. I am not like my father in that regard. I will be better than him. I know it is much to ask of you, we have only known each other for at most a few hours, but please trust me. I cannot say I love your brother as much as you do now, but I can say I do care about him and hope I shall love him for the man I believe that he is. Isabella sat there contemplating for a minute. Amalia had made a crown oath to her father and her family. That was not something to be taken lightly. I think I will trust you, Isabella said. Amalia smiled at her. So, you are one of the 7? Isabella asked. Or I guess 5 now. She frowned a little bit while correcting herself of the number, thinking of the 2 men that had sacrificed themselves for the kingdom. Yes, I am, Amalia said. I am a brass bellatrix and I specialize in flames. Are you sure you really have not heard of me? Maybe, it's hard to keep track of so many people and titles, Isabella admitted. It could just be me. I don't know the names of the other 3. I knew Duke Belus was one of the 7 because he and father were good friends while he was still alive. And Sir Chalkian visited Gardon a few times and I got to meet him in person. I guess I just never thought it was important to learn who the other ones were. I don't think I ever saw them when I visited the royal court with father. And they never came to visit up here. But they probably were busy doing things elsewhere for the kingdom. Well, that is fine then. Those 2, Duke Belus and Sir Chalkian. May their souls find rest and peace. I pray Hades has mercy and compassion on them. I did not know them, but I still hold great respect for them for the lives they lived and for their sacrifices. Glory to Agenor. Glory to Agenor, Isabella said under her breath. Amalia finished her slice of garnished bread. She looked Isabella straight in her eyes. Amalia had beautiful auburn eyes. They started to glow a vibrant yellow and orange. Isabella felt warmth. Those were the eyes of a brass bellatrix. The eyes of a protector. The eyes of a defender. They were the eyes of a comforter. Would you like to see it? Amalia asked. What in the shining crown regalia was she talking about now? See what? Isabella said. My spear. That seemingly came out of nowhere. Well, sort of. They had just been talking about bellatrixes, but why did she all of suddenly want to show her spear? It was quite strange, especially since they were in a healing room inside a holy monastery. Amalia raised her right hand, showing off a beautiful, shining, plain brass ring on her pointer finger. This is quite extraordinary, she said. I still am impressed with it, though I have carried it for a little while already. Isabella looked at Amalia with confusion in her eyes. First, she said she had wanted to show her spear. Now she was showing her a ring. What are you on about? Isabella asked curiously. This ring is the great fruit that has come from united efforts of 2 races working together, Amalia said. The dwarfs of Mount Thalea and the elves of Chrysaphus. Their best smiths have been working on this for years together. It is a bellatorite ring that uses angel cube technology. Some scholars say something like this used to exist long ago during the Great Dragon Wars. Now, we have it again, reforged and remade. And I am one of the first to use it. This is my spear. Amalia stood up and approached Camillo's bedside. She held up her right hand and it began to glow a vibrant array of orange and yellow. In a second of sudden glory, a magnificent brass spear now appeared in that hand. Isabella, though still confused, was in awe. Amalia held her spear above her head, which seemed to be emitting soft, flowing flames that slowly enshrouded it. And then she plunged it into Camillo's bed.